and not trying to give too much, leaving the pressure up to
Lee's and came back.
Man still has a lot of fight.
Barrios at 21-0.
second thing.
Protect yourself at all times, and what I say you must obey. Good luck.
Yo, stop scrolling right now, because the boxing world just had its mind completely blown, and if you are not up to speed on what went down tonight in Las Vegas, then you are in the right place at the right time. Ryan Garcia versus Mario Barrios just happened, and I don't say this lightly. The reactions coming out of the boxing community right now are unreal. Former champions, trainers, analysts, fighters who have been in this sport for decades, all saying the same thing. They did not see this coming. Not like this. Not tonight. The experts talked, the predictions flew, people picked sides, and now the dust has settled, and the whole sport is sitting there trying to figure out what they just watched. So let's get into it, because this one is going to take a minute to unpack. Okay, so before we get into the reactions, we need to talk about just how loaded this fight was going in. Because the context here is everything. This was not a normal fight build. This had layers. Ryan Garcia coming into tonight was one of the most debated figures in boxing. Not because people doubted his talent. Nobody in their right mind ever doubted his talent. But because of everything else that surrounded him. The Haney controversy. The Roly Romero fight, where he basically admitted after the fact that he didn't want to be there. The trainer carousel, going through Eddie Reynoso, Joe Goosen, Derek James, and then landing back with his dad, Henry. The social media chaos, the questions about his mental state, his discipline, his commitment to the sport at the highest level. All of that noise was following him into this fight. And on the other side, you had Mario Barrios, a guy who quietly built one of the most credible resumes in the division. Fought Pacquiao, had trainer Joe Goosen, who actually worked with Ryan Garcia previously, now in his corner. A guy who Shawn Porter compared to a computer. Methodical, calm, never out of position, never makes mistakes. Teddy Atlas was saying the mental question around Ryan might be the whole fight. Jeff Mayweather said out loud that Ryan shouldn't even be in this position coming off a loss. The doubt was real, it was loud, and it was coming from serious people. And then the bell rang. Let's talk about what the boxing world was actually saying in the lead-up, because looking back at it now with hindsight, it hits completely different. Shawn Porter went with Barrios. His reasoning was airtight too. He said Barrios is the kind of fighter who just hits his marks every single time, round after round, and that it takes someone doing the right things consistently to beat that. And he flat out said he doesn't think that's Ryan Garcia anymore. Not right now. Not with everything going on around him. Teddy Atlas framed the whole thing around the mental question. He said Ryan is physically fine, still young, still explosive, still has the speed advantage and the power. But he said the biggest variable is psychological. Which Ryan walks through that door? The locked-in, dangerous, world-class Ryan? Or the distracted, chaotic, going through the motions Ryan? Atlas made it clear that if you can answer that question, you can predict the fight. The problem is nobody could answer it. Not even Ryan himself, maybe. Roly Romero, and this one is kind of hilarious in hindsight, joked that Ryan might still have PTSD from their fight. But even Roly, who knows Ryan as well as almost anyone having sparred him for years, admitted we genuinely don't know what version shows up. He said Ryan could go in there and win by knockout if the camp was right, but we just don't know. And Greg Hackett called it a straight 50-50, said the height factor mattered, said Ryan needed to show more than just the left hook, said Barrios' jab could be the difference maker if he applied it properly. All of those takes made sense. All of them were reasonable. That is what makes what actually happened so jaw-dropping. And now here we are, fight done, and the reactions are pouring in. The overriding theme across the board is shock. Not necessarily at who won, because Ryan Garcia winning was always within the range of outcomes. The shock is in how. The version of Ryan that showed up tonight was not the version people were bracing for. He looked calm, focused, like he wasn't trying to be anything other than exactly what he is. And against a guy as experienced and disciplined as Barrios, that composure was everything. The analysts who picked Barrios are not making excuses, and that says something. When a smart boxing mind loses a prediction, they usually have a reason to point to. A tactical mistake, a corner error, a ref decision. Tonight? Most of them are just sitting there going, that was a different Ryan Garcia. That's the reaction you keep seeing. Different. Locked in. present in a way he hasn't been in recent fights. The trainers and corner people paying attention to the craft are talking about the timing on that left hook. Because it wasn't just power, it was placement, it was patience. Ryan waited for the right moment, and when Barrios gave him the angle, he made him pay instantly. That is not a fighter who showed up half-ready. That is a fighter who put in the work, studied the opponent, and executed when it counted. And the fans? Oh, the fans are going absolutely crazy. This is the Ryan Garcia they fell in love with. This is why this guy has the following he has. Because when he is right, when everything clicks, he is one of the most electrifying fighters on the planet. And tonight proved it all over again on the biggest stage. One thing I want to come back to, because I think it's going to be a big part of the conversation going forward, is the Henry Garcia situation. Because look, people were harsh about that decision. Robert Garcia questioned it publicly. The implication was that Ryan went back to his dad because he wanted control and someone who wouldn't push back on him, someone he could run. But watch that corner tonight. Watch the communication. Watch how Ryan responded to what was being said between rounds. There is clearly a trust there that Ryan hasn't had with trainers in a while. And maybe that trust is exactly what he needed. Maybe all the elite world-class coaching was the right thing technically, but wrong thing mentally, because Ryan couldn't fully surrender to it. With his dad, he could let go of the control battle and just focus on fighting. I'm not saying Henry Garcia is better than Eddie Reynoso. That is not the argument. The argument is that the right coach for Ryan Garcia is the one Ryan Garcia actually listens to. And tonight, that was his dad. You cannot argue with what happened in that ring. Okay, so now the part everyone actually wants to talk about. What comes next? Because Ryan Garcia, as WBC welterweight champion, opens up a set of fights that would make any boxing fan lose their mind. First, Devin Haney. This one has been sitting there unresolved for too long, and now Ryan has the leverage to demand it properly. Everyone knows the history. Ryan outperformed Haney on most people's cards, and the result was thrown out because of the weight miss. Ryan has been calling for that rematch ever since, and now he's the champion. Haney has to come to him. An official, properly sanctioned rematch with the title on the line is one of the most marketable fights in boxing right now. The casual audience knows the name. The hardcore audience knows the unfinished business. It sells itself, and both sides know it. But then there's Gervonta Tank Davis. And honestly, this might be the one. This beef goes back years. Same gym, leaked sparring footage, Ryan getting dropped, him calling Tank out publicly over and over and over again, while everyone around him said stay focused on what's in front of you. And Tank, on his side, never fully shutting the door either. There has always been this tension between them that feels unresolved in a way that only an actual fight can fix. Going in, Tank was considered a nightmare matchup for Ryan, specifically because of the pressure fighter issue. Ryan historically does not love getting pushed around, but tonight suggested that when his head is right, he can handle adversity and find his shot through it. His power at welterweight is legitimate. Barrios is not small, and he went down hard. Tank versus Ryan, whether it happens at lightweight or welterweight, is a pay-per-view event that writes its own promotional campaign. 3 words, you know what they are. And then, sitting quietly in the background is Shakur Stevenson, the one that doesn't have the same personal heat as Tank, or the same unfinished narrative as Haney, but stylistically, might be the most intriguing fight of the 3. Shakur is a pure genius in that ring. He makes opponents look lost. His footwork, his angles, his ability to make you miss by millimeters and then punish you for it. That is a completely different problem to anything Ryan has faced. And Ryan's explosive, power-based, timing-heavy style against Shakur's pure technical brilliance? That is must-watch television. That is one of those fights where both outcomes feel meaningful, and neither result would surprise anyone. If Ryan wants to be remembered as truly great, rather than just truly exciting, Shakur is eventually the conversation he has to have. The boxing world is reacting tonight, and the overwhelming feeling is that something shifted. Not just in a fight result kind of way, but in a bigger picture kind of way. Ryan Garcia has been written off, counted out, questioned at every level for a couple of years now. And tonight, he stood in front of all of it. in the biggest fight of his career and delivered, completely. The WBC welterweight title is his. Haney, Tank, and Shakur are all out there waiting. And for the first time in a long time, the conversation around Ryan Garcia is not about what might go wrong. It's about what comes next. Drop your reaction in the comments. Who should Ryan fight first? Because I genuinely cannot decide, and I think that's the best possible problem to have right now. If you're new here, subscribe because we are not done talking about this. Peace.